All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the STEM Files, where we highlight the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and Brown communities. Tonight, we're going to be talking about neuroscience and pregnancy, and we're going to be talking about several different types of issues that can arise during a pregnancy, and so much more. So stay tuned for more after this.
Believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy.
All right, once again, family, welcome back to the STEM Files. If it's Thursday, that means it's STEM Files Day. So thank you for returning back to the platform, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I am Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I am a biomedical research scientist with a concentration in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and the blood vessels. I'm typically joined by my right-hand business partner, best friend, Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabril Engineer. He is a civilian mechanical engineer for the United States Navy, and he works on those big, powerful ships that you see out on the coast. And unfortunately, he could not join us tonight, but he's definitely here in spirit. Tonight, we have a very, very powerful guest. She is a neuroscientist or a PhD neuroscience student at the University of Mississippi, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just making sure I got the school right. But she's from the University of Mississippi. She is a nation baby. She was born in the Nation of Islam. And she's going to be talking to us today about neuroscience and pregnancy, different types of neurological issues that can arise during pregnancy, as well as a myriad of other things or myriad of other problems that can arise during a pregnancy. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop yapping and messing things up. And go ahead and turn it over to our beloved sister, Sister Maria Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the platform.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Praise be to Allah. Family, for those who are watching, you can check us out on all of our social media pages at Tariq Cardiac, at Jabril_engineer, at the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter, the STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube. All right, so let's get it. We are talking about neuroscience in pregnancy. So Sis Q, give us a brief introduction of who you are, where you're from, and what science you represent.
Yes, sir. So, like my name is Maria Muhammad, and I am a fifth-year PhD student at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. So there's two universities, but I'm at the medical center section of it. I have been doing research for some time now. I first started being introduced to the biomedical field when I was in high school in a program called Base Pair. And from there, I've just continued to look for programs within my state, Mississippi, as well as out of state, so in regions such as Brown University as well. And currently, I am in my fifth year, where I'm in the School of Graduate Studies in Health Sciences at UMMC. And currently, my research focuses on neuroscience and pregnancy.
Excellent, excellent. So we here at the STEM Files are big on terminology. We like to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about before we continue with anything else. So you mentioned some keywords. You mentioned biomedical sciences. You mentioned neuroscience. You mentioned everyone knows what pregnancy is, but you mentioned a few things. So can we break down each of these things? What are biomedical sciences? What classifies as biomedical science? And then we'll get into neuroscience.
Yes, sir. So to break down the word, let's go biomedical. So first, bio, you can go to biology or study of the body. Medical, obviously those that involve understanding how diseases work and how we're able to rectify them, or how we're able to get rid of those diseases so that they don't interfere with our body's natural state. And of course, science is the study of how things work. So biomedical sciences.
Excellent. And I'm a little biased because I too am a biomedical scientist trained in biomedical sciences, and I'm very very excited about tonight's episode. And me and Jabril have this thing where if an engineer comes on the show, he kind of just takes over the show, and I just sit back and learn. And if somebody in the life sciences comes on, he just sits back and learns, and you'll ask a question every now and then. But he's not on the show tonight. So he doesn't have to sit back and just kind of be on the screen and be like, wow, that's amazing. But he's definitely watching and inshallah he's here with us in spirit. But now let's break up some other terminology. You said neuroscience, right? So what exactly is neuroscience, and how does it differentiate from the branch of medicine that we call neurology?
So neuroscience is very broad and it's actually an umbrella term. So something that you would call neurology is within the neurosciences.
Got it.
Neuroscience is usually broken down into two different categories. One considered the hard sciences, one considered the soft sciences. But overall, neuroscience is the study of the brain and understanding how things go wrong in the brain and how we're able to figure out ways to correct it or find ways to make medicines for it so that we no longer have to suffer from things such as mental illnesses or any degenerative illnesses that can actually break down the brain. So, yes, sir.
Mm, excellent, excellent. Very well put. And for those who are watching, please drop a fist or a thumbs up in the comment section if she broke down neuroscience and that you have a firm understanding of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, you mentioned something about making medicines for these different types of neurological problems, right? So I wanted to ask you, and um, you may not have done this with your research yet, but have you been able to use aspects of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in your research to not so much prove that he's right, but use it to help propagate what he's taught us when it comes to how to live, how we should live our lives, mental health, anything of that nature?
Absolutely. So I can definitely pull from How to Eat to Live specifically. In terms
Excellent.
of my first year in the program, we were learning about the foundations of neuroscience. And one of the things that we learned about was the brain gut axis, or that connection between our stomachs and our brains, and how the stomach can be considered a second brain if you really look at the way that it works.
Right.
So, in understanding how the stomach and the brain are connected, I was really open to the fact that Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is absolutely right. The way that we eat can influence the way that we think. If we eat
Come on.
things that can result in what's called inflammation, or it can result in maybe us having an upset stomach or something not agreeing with us, this can interfere with our mood. It can interfere with our ability to think properly. So, absolutely, the teachings are 100% through and through in neuroscience.
Mm. Praise be to Allah. And I definitely bear witness to that in using How to Live very heavily in my cardiovascular research. Most matter of fact, most of my research involving the heart or the blood vessels, anything along those lines, deals with the Navy bean and using that bean as I wouldn't say yeah, pretty much using it as a reservoir for every medicine or any type of tool that I would develop. That would be the base, the foundation. So I appreciate you using How to Live and understanding how to Live influences neuroscience. And I look forward to talking about this some more. So let's tackle your research a little bit, right? So we're talking about different problems or different types of neurological problems that can arise from pregnancy. So what is the foundation of your research? What exactly does your research entail, and what particular problems do you address?
So, specifically in my work, I'm focused on a condition of pregnancy called preeclampsia. And what that means is that there is a hypertensive disorder of pregnancy, or what that means is there's new onset hypertension or high blood pressure that happens in someone who may not normally have high blood pressure. So, maybe a woman before she's pregnant may not have had any history of high blood pressure, but for some strange reason during her pregnancy, specifically around the second trimester, she starts to have high blood pressure. What's interesting about this phenomenon is that there's no cure for it. However, if you deliver the offspring early as well as the placenta, you can actually reduce the symptoms of preeclampsia, such as those headaches and swelling. Some people may even have foggy brain or anything like that, or even excess protein in the urine and other damage to different regions of the body, such as the kidneys. So we still don't really know what causes this preeclampsia to happen, but that's specifically what my research focuses on. And I also focus on another aspect of it called eclampsia. So take the pre off of it, you get eclampsia.
Right,
And
right.
yes,
That's
sir.
why I didn't put that, making a whole nother screen for that.
Yes, sir. I understand. So what that means is that after having this new onset high blood pressure, she starts to have new onset seizures. So she has no history of having epilepsy or seizures of any kind, but for some reason, now because of this hypertension, she now develops new onset seizures. So that's particularly what my research focuses on.
Excellent, excellent. And I wanted to well, thank you for that breakdown of your research. And I wanted to ask you, you were saying how there was no cure, and there's no way of eliminating the issue as it's happening. What what can you gather from your research, coupled with your understanding of how to live? Can you determine from preeclampsia that, I mean, is there something in what you know of how to live that can be applied to this to make it something easier to cure in a sense?
Yes, sir. So one of the ways that, or one of the conditions that can actually result in preeclampsia being more likely to happen is obesity or being overweight. So the way we eat can influence whether or not we're likely to develop preeclampsia. That's not always the case. However, it has been shown to have a considerable effect on developing it. Something else is a history of potentially having diabetes that can also increase our likelihood of developing preeclampsia as well. So, going back to the teachings and how to eat to live, the messenger already told us, especially for those who may be diabetic or pre-diabetic, how we can eat in order to reduce the likelihood of developing diabetes, as well as a cure for diabetes, which is to refrain from starchy foods, refrain from sweets, and all of these things that we've already been taught in how to eat to live.
Mm. And Sister Sabrina, she put up a question a few minutes ago. Why does this happen? Do these risk factors are pretty much why it happens, right? These
Yes,
are
sir.
the set of things that contribute to preeclampsia. So she mentioned my loved one had two emergency C-sections because of preeclampsia. Did not show up until 38 weeks gestation. So what? Now we went over the risk factors, right?
Yes, sir.
Why does it show up so late?
That's another area of research that I'm not in right now, but I have heard a lot of work being done understanding what's called postpartum preeclampsia or late stage preeclampsia in general, where she may not show any symptoms throughout her pregnancy, yet all of a sudden these things seem to happen. I actually have a slide that gives a little bit of I guess you could call it some background or history of how we think preeclampsia happens.
Let's
So
get
let
to
me
it.
see if I can share my screen. Okay. So this in general is the theory of why we think preeclampsia happens. So, of course, it is involving our diet and the environmental factors around that. But something that seems to be agreed upon as to why preeclampsia happens is that there isn't enough blood being given between the mother and the placenta. And we think that this happens because of something called impaired spiral artery remodeling. So those are those arteries that connect that blood from the placenta to the mother. Normally, what happens is that there is a change in the way that our arteries and vessels are able to distribute blood around the body. So you'll have an increase in blood flow due to this pregnancy, and that's just normally. But what seems to happen in preeclampsia that this change in vessel activity doesn't seem to be happening properly. So that can
Mm,
actually make it difficult for there to be enough blood being flown from the mother and the placenta. So if you really think about it, if we're able to eat in a way and live our lives in a way that results in us being able to continue to have proper health of our vessels and proper health of our blood pressure in general, then we're able to reduce the likelihood of having these having preeclampsia happen in the first place.
Wow, wow. And that ties into the next question I have for my beautiful wife, Sister Kiera. She said, are there neuromarkers that can help diagnose preeclampsia early to help determine who are more likely to be predisposed to preeclampsia? And we talked about it a little bit with the way these arteries are not only being developed, but the influence that we put on the arteries prior to and during the pregnancy, right?
Yes, sir.
So it really boils down to, and that this is not my field, I'm just adding on to what you said. It really boils down to understanding how we should be taking care of ourselves before the pregnancy. Well, how women should be taking care of themselves before the pregnancy, during, and after. So, and my background is cardiovascular and dealing with the heart and blood vessels. So these blood vessels, and we sleep on them. Like we have no idea how important our blood vessels are to the overall development of whatever we're doing, and especially another human being. So we really got to take into account what we're doing with our lives, how we're living. So, and if you wanted to add to specifically any neuromarkers, anything like that, anything else that shows up during preeclampsia?
Yes, so actually, that's what my research focuses on, learning about these neuromarkers and potentially finding them. But I do know in terms of just biomarkers or just biological ways of us being able to figure out or diagnose this, people usually look for things such as SFLT, which is a soluble FMS-like growth factor, well, SFLT, soluble FM-like tyrosine, VEGF or vascular endothelial growth factor. So vascular vessels, endothelial, that will be the skin essentially, or the dermis of whatever tissue you're talking about, growth factors. So those things that allow for our vessels to grow. So these are the things that can allow for our vessels to form in a way that's proper. Normally, what happens is that there is a change in the concentration of these markers. But what seems to be happening in preeclampsia is that those markers that are important for allowing these vessels to grow and allowing them to be as they're supposed to be are reduced in preeclampsia. And those that can actually uh, increase that likelihood of those things being constricted or not being formed properly are increased. So that seems to be one of the markers that people use to diagnose preeclampsia. As far as diagnosing it early, we're still not really clear on how to do that. But for the neural markers, I'm actually investigating two potential neuromarkers. One being what's called acid sensing ion channels. So these are channels that are found both in the vessels as well as in the brain. And they're important for controlling how much of brain activity is occurring, as well as um, making sure that pH outside of our cells and outside of our neurons are able to function in a manner that doesn't interfere with other processes. So that's one of those markers that I'm looking at, and it seems like, based on the research that I'm doing so far, that it could be a potential neural marker that could help us in diagnosing preeclampsia.
Wow. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And family, for those who are watching, go ahead and drop some fists and likes or some thumbs up in the comment section to let us know that our sister is teaching you well and that you're learning a lot. We have a good amount of people watching, so go ahead and
Great
drop
to
that
see that.
appreciation. Absolutely. So I actually, it's giving me atherosclerosis vibes because when the initial part of my research was focusing on endothelial injury
Mm,
and how different aspects of the inner lining or the skin of the inside of that blood vessel is injured or attacked in a way, causing a cascade of responses building up to a plaque buildup, or as we say, clogging of the arteries in a sense. So this is a very intersecting science that can go into other areas of research. So we have we have some more things we want to put up here. Exactly what happened, no previous risk factors. We have how to eat to live, what have definitely helped. Thank you, sis. We have something from Sarah West. She said, proud of you. I believe that's Aunt Judy, RVA. And then we also have another comment from my wife. She said, what are currently any labs that can be obtained to show the presence of that acid?
Currently, what most people will usually do is they'll take the placenta, and that's one of the ways they're able to determine if you had preeclampsia or if there may be some changes that occurred that resulted in you likely having these change in biomarkers. Something else that people will take is the serum. So they'll just take a blood sample and they'll spin it down using a machine called a centrifuge. So that uses force to push down the clotted blood so that you have nothing but the serum left. And that's usually what allows people to figure out whether or not you might have a difference in the concentration of those vascular markers that can result in you likely have having preeclampsia or being more likely to develop preeclampsia.
Excellent, excellent. Well, and thank you so much for breaking down all the terminology that you mentioned, because we are big. The STEM Files is big on our community understanding what we're talking about, because that's oftentimes what drives people, or Black people, especially away from science, is because they don't understand the people that are teaching them.
Yes,
so here in the STEM Files, we're not going to let you go by the wayside not understanding what we're saying, especially if you hear a word and we don't touch it. Make sure that you drop that in the comment section. Yes, Sister Maria, she's definitely teaching us today. Sister Sabrina. Absolutely. So she asked the question as well. Sister Sabrina, she's on my team here in Richmond for the Ministry of Health. And she asked, what are some things to keep our blood vessels healthy? I am sure diet, exercise, thought, etc. plays a part, but anything the audience can apply practical in their everyday life.
Those things specifically.
Right.
Those are some things specifically that can be applied right now.
Right.
Things like prayer. We don't really understand how powerful prayer really can be, being able to
Come on.
focus on the Creator and being able to calm our mind, knowing that we're not alone. That 100% can help with our mental health, and that, of course,
Right.
can help with our vascular health as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. All right, we have some comments coming in again from our faithful audience. All right, so at this time, we're going to go ahead and take a short break, family. We're going to talk about the Final Call newspaper, as well as a Black business highlight. So at this time, family, we're going to play a short clip, and we'll be right back after that.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call digital edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
All right, family. This week's issue of the Final Call is titled Defenders of the Culture. Now, for anybody that knows me, I'm a huge hip-hop head. I love when hip-hop artists, rap artists use their platform to educate their people. And we have several artists in the nation alone who are doing that very well. We have Neelam, we have Dianetics, we have Golden Child. We got rappers that the world knows, like Kendrick Lamar, Chance the Rapper. Man, I forget the brother that's right there underneath Dianetics to the left. Man, my uncle's gonna kill me. Chuck D. There we go, Chuck D. We have rappers from all generations, all walks of life, from the Nation of Islam, outside the Nation of Islam, who do a good job of defending the culture. So this edition of the Final Call is hip-hop artists and activists who refuse to follow the lead of corporations and spew music preaching the gospel of self-destruction. And that cover story starts on page 3. If you are in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, definitely tap in with Jabril. if you are in the Richmond, Virginia area or in the DMV area in general, definitely tap in with me. I can get you your latest issue of the Final Call newspaper. Now, you can get the online version of the Final Call at finalcalldigital.com. And you can also follow them on the social media at Final Call Newspaper. Now, Jabril usually does this segment, but I think I did pretty good with this one this time. So definitely check out the Final Call newspaper. And if there's any, and the Final Call really is not just about the cover page. We have things in there regarding how to live. We have things regarding health and beauty. We have things regarding agriculture, business, the whole nine. You can find everything you need in the Final Call newspaper. It's a one-stop shop. You don't have to go anywhere else. Flagship product of the Nation of Islam. Check it out. All right, family. So thank you for that short, brief break in regards to the Final Call newspaper. Now, one question I had, I think we have some more questions from the audience. Here we go. This is from Kiera again. Was there anything about your research that you discovered that was unexpected regarding preeclampsia?
So we were not expecting that. So in terms of preeclampsia and its advancement to eclampsia, which is predominantly what I'm focused on, how this advancement from having high blood pressure to now all of a sudden having seizures happens. Something that's unexpected is that what I was talking about, acid sensing ion channels, there are different types of those ion channels. The one that we specifically focus on is called 2A. So there's 1, there's 3, and there's 1A. Those 1A, 3, and 1 have been studied as it relates to seizures in general and just epilepsy in general, which is just chronic seizures. But there really hasn't been a lot of work investigating ASIC2A or acid sensing ion channel 2A. So what was surprising was that previous research actually showed that if you increase its expression, you can actually make seizures worse. Surprisingly, in our study, we found that in our model of preeclampsia, they actually have reduced expression. And what's more surprising is that when we tested to see if those animals that might have been genetically modified in order to see a reduction in ASIC2A, whether or not they may have a change in seizure activity, we found that they're more sensitive to seizures when their expression is reduced. So that was something that we were surprised to see, whereas other studies saw an increase in expression actually results in worse seizures. We're still trying to understand what that means on the molecular level, or looking specifically within what are called astrocytes, or those things that are important for monitoring the brain, as well as what are called microglia. So microglia, you can think of these being like the macrophages, or the those cells that are important for our immune system.
Right.
Our brain
Right.
has a specific set of these immune cells called microglia. We're looking and investigating whether or not we're also seeing a change in this expression of ASIC2A within the brain, and whether or not that could be another factor that could be a reason for why they're actually having worse seizures.
So now, from what I understand about seizures, right, it's pretty much a disruption in the neurological system, right?
Yes.
And I would gap, this is just a scientific assumption, just based on what we know about preeclampsia and what we know about seizures. Could it be, and like I said, I'm not the expert, you are, could it be that the seizures are maybe causing these particular signals to, I wouldn't say act funny, but could it be influencing what you pick up on in terms of the types of signaling that you're studying for preeclampsia?
So in terms of, I guess, the brain's ability to communicate from one end to the other, what we
Right.
do know about seizures is that there's a disruption in that activity. So I have another slide about that, actually.
Okay.
So
Yeah, hold on, let me take this down. Hold on.
yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
So let's see if I can bring that up very quickly. Okay, so on what is a seizure. So it's described as there being a disruption in those signals that are sent back and forth to the brain. And predominantly, these signals are what are considered excitatory, or those that kind of get things up and running, and those that are inhibitory. So they kind of reduce that signaling so that there's not so much that the brain can't function properly. What happens in a seizure is that there's too much of this exciting excitatory or excitatory activity, and there isn't enough of this inhibitory activity. So there's too
Mm,
much activity occurring, and this can result in the brain being in what is called a neurotoxic or toxic to the brain effect.
right.
So this is what we're seeing happen in those who develop from preeclampsia to eclampsia. Um, and in my current work, we're focusing on two modulators or two components that are important for seizure activity. Now, whether or not preeclampsia, how preeclampsia actually results in this happening, we're really still not clear about what role it might have. Because we do know that, for example, if someone does have high blood pressure, they may be more likely to develop a seizure because of just what's happening with the vascular or the vessels within the brain. We need
Right.
to understand in neuroscience is more than just the signals within the brain. It's also maintaining those signals. If those signals aren't maintained properly, you can interfere with everything happening in the brain. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Brain is definitely complex for sure, for sure. All right, so we have another. Well, I'm gonna save that question for later. I want to close out this topic of preeclampsia. Let me see. Let me see. We have. All right. So, well, let me go ahead and bring this up. So this is from Alberta Molden. At age 45, I gave birth via C-section. I was not overweight. In fact, I lived a healthy lifestyle, but I almost died. I was scheduled to have a C-section on Monday morning, on early Tuesday, or early Thursday morning before C-section. I tested negative for pre-clam, but Friday morning, I had an emergency C-section. They said I almost died from late pre-clam. Now, we talked about understanding why it happens so late in the pregnancy, right?
Mhm.
Can we say that the closer you get to delivery, the added stress may potentially induce preeclampsia, or would that be something a little bit too much of a reach?
No, it is possible because there are a lot of things that change, especially when it comes to blood flow
Right.
during the time of delivery. And especially if things aren't taken care of properly within the emergency room or wherever you choose to give birth, then that can just add to the stress of you being able to function properly after delivery. Something else, and this is something that a lot of people are also investigating, whether or not the age at which a person is pregnant can actually result in there being a more likely chance of developing preeclampsia.
Mm,
So far from the research that I've seen, there's a suggestion that the later in life that a pregnancy occurs, the more likely preeclampsia is to occur too. So for even women who may not have a history of typically uh, overweight, being obese, or anything like that, there still is that likelihood of developing preeclampsia, even in spite of some of these other risk factors.
mm. I think we should give you a round of applause just for the amazing work you're doing in science,
Praise be to
and
Allah.
especially this field, because one, outside of death, pregnancy has to be the most stressful thing that can be put on the body.
Absolutely.
And us as men, we have to really not only respect women more for this, we have to understand that, you know, and I've talked about this before. We have to be more understanding of what y'all are going through in pregnancy. You know, we have a lot of when we have husbands out there who, when their wives are pregnant, there's nothing she doesn't doesn't get, or she, you know, we make sure that, you know, you got what you need at the drop of a dime, you know. But I really want us to understand just how special and important giving birth is and how dangerous it is. because essentially you all are dying just to give life. So having these issues come up, like needing a C-section or preeclampsia or anything along those lines, it really puts into perspective, the value of life and bringing new life into this world. It's very risky, it's very dangerous. And the way that we are taking care of you all while you're pregnant, before you're pregnant, it makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to shout all Black women out there. This episode is about pregnancy in general, but we're really talking about Black women while they're pregnant, in a sense, because and correct me if I'm wrong, Black women go through this the most. Am I right?
Absolutely. We're we're not predisposed, but we're more likely than any other racial group to have these issues. And of course, as we've seen in some news articles, some of that is contributed to the environments that we're in when we do give birth. So if our OBGYN or the doctors that are there to assist us in giving birth are not there for us, then that can just add to the stress of us being able to give birth to new life.
Absolutely. So we got two amazing questions coming up. So I want to be strategic in asking these. So the first question I'm going to ask is from Marty's son. And she asks, can preeclampsia and brain chemistry reaction be seen similar to the chemical process to muscle fatigue? More in the brain and immune response, please.
That's a good question. Well, I do know. So when you're talking about just normal pregnancy, because this is usually the way that we can base what happens or what goes wrong. So in normal pregnancy, there are significant changes that happen in the brain. A lot of these involve what we know as hormones. There are different hormonal changes that happen in the brain that can, you could say, prepare that brain to be maternal or to be ready for that child when they're born. What can happen, not what could, but what can happen is if there is some disruption or there are some external environmental factors that interfere with this proper process of the brain being prepared to mother, then that can really throw everything off. Not to mention that if there's anything going wrong with the diet of the mother, or if she's not in a stable environment where she feels safe and secure, then that can just, add on. And talking about the brain immune response, it's been shown clearly that if we are in a more stressful environment or we feel that we are just stressed out in general, this can result in our immune system going haywire. So adding all of these factors together and then you're pregnant, that just throws everything off.
So the woman being in her natural frame of mind, safe and secure, having or having a good diet, being able to go about her life without these particular stresses creates the ultimate environment for not only the conception of a child, but the birth of a child.
Absolutely. I know that the minister, I was re-listening to his lecture, How to Give Birth to a God, and how he talked about that we women, we shape the brains of our children. But we need to understand that if we ourselves are not in a good frame of mind or in a good state or environment to first have a child and then second take care of that child, then we have a difficult time taking care of not only everybody else, but us. So if we're not right, then how can anything else be right? So it has to start with us.
Right. Wow. Absolutely. Has to start with the woman for sure. Man, this has been an incredible platform, incredible episode. I wanted to just kind of take another break, and because there's something I forgot to do, and that was do our Black business highlight. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and talk about who we're highlighting this week, and it is Emac Investments. Emac Investments is a company owned by young brothers, young men, young family men in the city of New York City and in areas of New Jersey who put together a company that helps Black men focus on not only style, grooming, and different things of that nature, but they also help the Black man with his business acumen and understanding what business is and understanding how to conduct yourself and how to look while you are carrying out business. So I definitely want to shout out these brothers. I grew up with one of them, Brother Tariq out of New York City, Muhammad's Mosque number 7. He's a mentor of mine. He's taught me a lot. He's an engineer, so he's been on the show I think twice by now. And him and his brothers, and him and his biological brothers and his brothers in the faith came together to form this company. And if you'd like to know more about Emac Investments and learn more about men's grooming, I know this is an episode about Black women, but I thought it would be a nice contrast to have a Black business that focuses on helping the Black man. So definitely check that out. If you would like to learn more about what they do, go ahead and visit the caption in YouTube or the description on YouTube or the caption on Facebook. However you're watching, it's right there in the information about the episode. So definitely check that out. All right, so now we're going to get into some of these questions. We got a question from Sister Sabrina. She says, Sister Maria, unfortunately, my daughter had a STDI. Why is the brain so difficult to understand? As you stated with the previous question about preeclampsia, in the brain, a lot is just unknown. So, and that's a good question too. We're talking about issues that can arise, neurological issues that can arise during pregnancy, but why is the brain such a complicated thing to understand? Now, I favor the heart. that's just me. But, why is the brain such a complex organ? What is it about the brain that makes it so difficult for scientists and the general community to understand?
That's a beautiful question. Is actually the reason that I decided to get a degree and learn more about neuroscience. Because, like the sister said, there's so much that we don't understand. One of the reasons that I'm discovering for myself as to why it's so difficult is because as we're learning about it, it's changing. Like as we speak, the brain is changing. So it's a question of, are you understanding the brain at this point in time? Does that apply when we look at it later? Sometimes it
Right.
does, sometimes it doesn't. So that's one of the reasons why it's just such a difficult topic to really understand. And then in terms of preeclampsia and just pregnancy in general, there's so many things changing throughout that time that there's a question of, when do we look at the brain? And when is the best time to really say, okay, this is 100% what's wrong. We can find an herb or we can develop something that can assist with helping this problem, but it might change as we age, and more usually it does. So these are so many of the reasons for why the brain is just one of the areas that I am so interested in, and one that really is just, you can take it anywhere. No, you can take neuroscience into cardiovascular research. You can take
Yes.
it into kidney research. You can take it into foot
Right.
research, because the brain controls everything. It controls us. But then, of course, there's also the question of, and this is something that is still being investigated in neuroscience, of our ability to make choices, how our brain, or how we're able to control what we think. That's something that we're still trying to understand. And then consciousness, what does that actually mean in terms of how the brain functions properly? What does it mean if we are in a conscious state, subconscious state, unconscious state? These are all of the things that really makes it very
Right.
complex, but you really
Right.
never run out of questions when you look at
Ever.
neuroscience.
Never. Like we can do part 3, 4, 5 of this one topic. It's such there's so much to unpack. And speaking of things to unpack, I have a book in front of me, L. Ron Hubbard, Dianetics, right? And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gave us Dianetics as a tool to help us relieve ourselves of the traumas that we've experienced in our lives, right? Can you say that Dianetics, and oftentimes Dianetics is not looked at as a legit science by some hard scientists trained in the hard sciences, so to speak? So can you give any insight into how Dianetics can be beneficial to neurological issues? or tie into neuroscience?
So, in terms of just the trauma that we face, especially just as Black women, as Black people in general, and then just people that have been marginalized and just, taken off of view of being important. When you have that type of thinking about yourself, or if you have been exposed to something that has really interfered with your ability to see yourself properly, you really completely change the way that your brain is working. I know that there's a lot of trauma research going on in terms of depression and uh, different mental disorders such as that, where they're actually seeing the brain slowly dying because of these disorders. So something like Dianetics, where we're able to face these traumas and find ways of healing through understanding why they happened,
Right.
how I can get through it, and how I can teach somebody else how to get through it. That can really assist in helping us to grow ourselves as well as grow our minds in general. So.
Mm. Beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. And for those who are not familiar with Dianetics, it's a system. I wouldn't say, yeah, I could say developed by L. Ron Hubbard back in I want to say the 30s, I believe, or the 40s, one of those. And it's pretty much a system that he developed to help people overcome things that have happened to them, things that they may not even know has happened to them. Like, why are we the way we are? A lot of us don't know why, and Dianetics kind of helps you with that process. So, thank you for that insight. We have another question from audience. Kiara just blowing up the comment section. I love it. What is something you want your research to help shed light on? I'm in the public health field, and I know there are many early intervention applications this can lead to in a clinical setting.
So I spoke about one aspect of my current research, which is about acid sensing ion channels. The other aspect that I believe is of more interest and maybe of clinical interest specifically is the endocannabinoid system.
Mm,
And what that system is, we mostly know about that system through marijuana or weed or cannabis, whatever you want to call it, because that's the way that this plant is able to interact with our brain. So naturally, we have what's called an endo or inner cannabinoid system. And there are different components that are necessary to allow for this system to work. So for this system, it also can uh, change or modulate or allow for there to be some control as to how our brain works. Uh, Interference with this system can result in some bad outcomes, obviously.
right, right.
But that's actually another aspect of my research that I think would be really interesting for the public to know, especially in terms of knowing that preeclampsia can, and it has been shown in previous work, as well as there's some potential that I'm seeing that in my work as well, that it can affect this system where normally you'll see these receptors, the proteins that are important for our that system to work properly. You'll see some changes in that activity where it's no longer functioning properly. And again, we're still not really clear how preeclampsia results in these changes happening. But we do know that in pregnancy in general, that the endocannabinoid system is vitally important for allowing that pregnancy to even happen in the first place. So
Mm,
that's something that I believe we need to shed more light on. That interfering with this system while it's doing what it's supposed to do can interfere with pregnancy in general. So,
mm. Wow. Yes, man. And please, Kiara, if that answered your question, go ahead and drop a heart or a black fist in the comment section. We are doing amazing. We are 50 minutes in, and it doesn't feel like half an hour yet. So I'm definitely enjoying this. Um, when you are going through your research, right, and you're looking at all of the things that you've accomplished so far and the different types of understandings that your research has brought, what can you say is the most satisfying aspect of your research personally? Like, we're not even talking about you know, we know what your interests are, but what has been the most satisfying thing about your research so far that has really kept you going with the process?
It's the fact that everything that I've ever been taught while being a part of the nation has been proven absolutely correct.
Come on.
I am able to take How to Eat to Live, Message to the Black Man, Our Savior Has Arrived, all of the books that the messenger gave us, and apply it in different ways to any problem that comes up that I get while doing the research. So, if something isn't happening properly, first thing I do, pray. That's the first thing I
Mm.
can do.
Right,
And it's
right.
the best thing that I can do, because when I'm able to do that, I'm able to focus and I no longer have to worry about what somebody else may think in terms of the problem not being solved, because it's going to get solved. So I think that being able to see the teachings in action has been one of the most satisfying things being in this field.
Absolutely, absolutely. Your research will help solve many things. Um, As a matter of fact, and I completely forgot to ask this question. This is from Eric Davis. I'm gonna ask after I say this real quick. Your research is gonna help open the eyes to a lot of things, and I'm interested to see how you were able to use Our Savior Has Arrived or relate Our Savior Has Arrived to your research. How were you able to use that? I know the How Do You to Live part. I can see the message to the Black man part. Our Savior Has Arrived. How have you been able to unpack that and apply it to your research, or use that to understand your research?
So the messenger, when he talked about Master Muhammad and the fact that he came for us, in this field of research, I'm able to see why he came for us. Because in the unique region that I'm in Mississippi. So predominantly I see a lot of Black people. And thankfully, I do see not a lot, but I see a decent amount of Black people who are doing amazing things in research. And knowing that he came for us and knowing that we are the ones who are going to bring in a brand new world, applying that and then seeing how that's happening with our people is just amazing to me. So being able to collaborate with those people, being able to be a student in the classroom with those people, it just brings back the fire whenever I it dampens sometimes because things just aren't going right. It brings back the fire that we are bringing in a brand new world. So.
Have your coworkers seen that fire? Have they seen or have they been introduced to how you understand research through the teachings? Have you been able to share that with them?
I believe so. There's like few little nuggets that I bring in every now and
Right,
then where
right.
maybe somebody might not be having the best of days. So I say breathe. And next, I'll impart some knowledge that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan have given us in terms of not allowing the things that happen outside of us to interfere with us in general, that we bring
Right,
our own atmosphere whenever we go anywhere. So we
right,
should
right.
never let anybody's perception of us or the way they look at us result in us looking at ourselves that way either. So.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And you're doing a phenomenal job representing both your profession and the teachings very well simultaneously. Because and I've had a personal gripe with many who um, have the teachings and they're scientists, but they don't they don't use one to show the glory of the other. And I personally don't particularly care for that. Like if I'm a scientist, you can best believe something on how to eat to live is going to be the base of my work. That's that's
Absolutely.
exactly what I'm going. That's worth more to me than any medical textbook, any science textbook. If I as long as I got those two books, I'm good because really, if I know the science, I can use any aspect of science to elevate how to eat to live to any level I want to. So we got to do better, especially if we have the teachings of using what we've been taught to magnify that.
Absolutely. The teachings can be proven at no limit of time. So it doesn't matter which field we're in.
Come
The
on.
teachings apply. If what we believe doesn't apply to reality, then it's not real. But when we
Yeah,
understand that Allah, God, is our only reality, we can do anything we want to do by his
anything.
permission.
That's right. Nothing we can do with the lost permission. All right, so I want to ask this. This is a little bit off topic. He asked, "What could cause a brain aneurysm to occur in the center of the brain?"
Mm, that's a good question. I know that in
I apologize because that was something asked earlier on.
I understand. So I know in terms of an aneurysm, one of the ways that I've seen it occur is with stress, but that's one of the only reasons that I've ever seen it occur. I don't necessarily know in terms of other reasons as well. I do know that there's a region of the brain that's important for sending blood to every other part. It's called the Circle of Willis. So
Yes,
if you have an issue with any region within that center, then you can result in things such as a stroke and aneurysm in general, or just interference with the brain's processing in general as well. So, like I mentioned before, we have more in our brain than just the ability to send signals. There's also maintaining those signals. What helps in maintaining those signals is also the vessels. There's also those astrocytes. I talked about the immune cells in the brain. They all are important in order for our brain to function properly. So, something like stress can result in there being an interference in our ability to move blood from one part of the brain to the other. So,
absolutely. And for those who are watching, an aneurysm is pretty much when there's too much pressure building up in the artery and it begins to expand. And sometimes it can stay as it is, or it can burst, or it can hemorrhage and bleed out. So when we think about blood pressure, right? One of the risk factors for aneurysms is high blood pressure. When there's just too much blood flowing through the artery at a time, and then the force is so great. Sometimes the wall of that artery can be so compromised that it's not able to hold in that pressure anymore, and it just starts compensating for the pressure and getting wider and wider to the point where, like I said before, it bursts or what have you. So many causes, many causes: high blood pressure, stress, like Sister said, many things. So we got to stay up on that. Your diet is like number one, because before any prophet came to teach any people, the first thing he taught them is the diet, is how to eat. So if your diet, if the way you're eating is not in accord to what your body needs, then you're going to experience these problems. So just, just let's avoid all the aneurysms and avoid all the heart attacks, the strokes, different things like that. Let's try to keep that from taking place. All right, so we have another comment from Sister Sabrina. She said, "Yes, ma'am. Any limited time, we praise due to Allah. We are in the right place at the right time, with the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Jesus on the scene. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan." Absolutely,
yes, ma'am.
absolutely. All right, family. So we're approaching the end of the show. We're about to hit an hour, and once again, it does not feel like it's been an hour. So at this time, we're going to do two more things, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We have something we like to do called nuclear reactions. Nuclear reactions is a part of the program where we pick something from social media and we have our guests react to it to get her take or get her point of view on the particular subject. Now, we have something from the Shade Room. Now, we're not promoting the Shade Room, but there are different topics on the Shade Room that we wanted to kind of talk about on the show. Now, we wanted to get your thoughts on this, Sister Maria. A new study says, and this isn't new because we've already known this, that parabens found in hair products for Black women increase growth of breast cancer cells. Now, you don't necessarily have to come in on the breast cancer part because we know these parabens can cause a myriad of issues and some neurological. So can you give your thoughts on these products that they're making for women, and talk about the effects or some of the neurological effects that you know of that Black women have experienced from these products and that contain parabens?
Yes, sir. So, first, just in terms of Black women and hair in general, I can start there. So, we know as Black women, we are very adamant about our hair being in a correct way and cooperating with us at all times, especially when we go out into the world. And
Right.
our hair is an extension of our beauty in general. And it's also an extension of our mental state. So, for example, we've seen this before where maybe somebody is not in the best of situations where they may not wash their hair as often or take care of it. And we can tell just by looking at that they may not be in the right spot or right frame of mind. So what some of these companies have come out with are products that can be like a fast, I guess, a quick fix for some of us, where we may not feel like we have time to really deal with our hair at all. So sometimes we may go to those quick fixes. They're not always the best option, clearly, as what we've seen with the parabens and other chemicals that we'll add in there. And we know that this happens because usually if you have a quick fix, there's usually a quick death. So in general, what I can say is that in taking care of ourselves mentally, that comes with our hair as well. That's the physical part of us. You need to be able to take care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And if all of these three things are not aligned properly, then we're not a whole person, and we know that we're not. So as Black women, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. We can't always just take care of other people and then ignore us. We're number one. We have to understand that, we're Allah's girls. So we need to be reminded of that. And in terms of our hair, learn methods of taking care of our hair that are natural and that go along with our body's natural chemistry. So things like, I guess this was in the movie, what was it called? Coming to America. What was it? Juices and Berries, I think
Yeah.
was what was mentioned. But really, those natural products and
Right,
natural
right.
ways of taking care of our hair, they're from the earth. And because we're from the earth, being able to put earth in earth is logical. So understanding ways of
Absolutely.
taking care of ourselves and, of course, an extension, our hair, uh, helps us in maintaining the earth.
Right, right. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Wow. So, and can you also, something was mentioned in that particular post, parabens. Can you go into what parabens are and why they're so dangerous for the human cosmetics?
Yes. So, they are synthetic products that a lot of people do use, and a lot of their uh, in a lot of their hair care products, as well as it can be found in some food products as well. So these are also some things that we need to be careful of. But it can interfere with our natural hormones. So, and it can function as a hormone disruptor. So that's one of the reasons why it can develop things such as breast cancer and just cancer in general, because it can disrupt the body's natural ability to have homeostasis and hormone regulation.
Absolutely. All right, family. So we learned so much today. I want to first and foremost thank you again for joining us. This has been an incredible episode. We would love to have you back on in the future. We're going to go ahead and do something called a STEM file speed round. And STEM file speed round is really just a lightning round, rapid fire questions that we ask you outside of the topic to get to know you more as a guest. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Before we do that, is there anything you'd like to know about us or anything you'd like to ask us while you're here?
Nothing's coming up right now. It might come up right after I leave.
Of course, it's how it always is. All right, so the first thing we want to ask you, what's the first thing you do or wake up or do or think of when you wake up?
First thing I do is drink water.
Drink
Absolutely.
water. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Hot or cold?
Warm, room temperature.
Okay. Walking or jogging?
Walking.
It's the best exercise, right?
Absolutely.
Professional work or volunteer work?
Ooh, that's a good one. I actually love volunteer work a little bit more because I really get to see people in a natural element, and I'm not getting
Right.
paid, so I really get to see who you are as a person.
Right, right. You really actually want to be there.
Yes.
If I'm a volunteer, like if I'm not getting paid, like okay, I'm here. I want
Yeah.
to be here. Awesome. All right. Let's see. iPhone or Android?
Android all day. Don't
Hmm.
care.
Wow, wow. Yeah, it's funny because I just switched over to iPhone. I want to say 2 months ago, and now I mean I don't have no problems with those who use Android, but I get why other people had a problem when I was using Android. So
Yeah.
all right, cool. Favorite thing to cook?
Oh, eggplant parmesan.
What's with
It's
people with
beautiful.
eggplants? I
It's
don't
beautiful.
understand that.
It's beautiful. It's the way you cook it. It's perfect.
Nah. See that's a whole nother conversation. All right, favorite song of all time.
Oh my God, that one's difficult. I love Butterflies by Michael Jackson.
Okay, bet. That's underrated too. Like and all of the ballads that Mike said. People know Mike for the up tempo
Yeah,
dance vibes, but all those ballads, those underrated ballads, are like
absolutely. I would highly recommend listening to his Invincible album. It is completely
yes.
underrated. Please listen to it.
There's a song on there, Unbreakable, where he
Yeah,
samples Big.
100%. Oh my
I'm like,
God. Yes.
this the song from start to finish. And it's all, and I think Butterflies is my favorite. She just texted me. That's her favorite song, favorite Michael Jackson song. But his ballads are just like top notch. Like we
Yes.
always sleep on the ballads. That Unbreakable song he did with Biggie, uh,
Yes.
gold from start to finish. I
Phenomenal.
love that song. Even Biggie's verse, like even though it was kind of you know too out there, it
Mm,
fit the song so well. And the way they were
yes.
able to lay his vocals over that track, A1, A1, A1. All right. Let me see. Youth engagement or raising money for a nonprofit.
Youth engagement. It's something about being around younger people that you really get to see where the future's going.
Awesome. Okay. The worst job you've ever had.
Oh, huh. Hmm. It's weird because I've mostly been working in research, so it's hard for me to say. Well, no, I can say. So, um, I was working as just, I guess, putting files together. I don't know. It was just regular office work. I get bored by that, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Got you. All right. If you were stuck on an island for a year and you could only listen to 3 albums, what would they be?
Invincible by Michael Jackson. Um, I love, man, what was it called? It was in my head and now it's gone. Um, and the Alicia Keys album, but I cannot remember the name of it. It was the one that no one is on.
No one is on. You talking
Yes.
about a Michael Jackson album?
No, Alicia Keys.
Lisa Keys.
The
Man, that's
album that
hard.
no one is on. I cannot remember it.
Oh, you talking about the song "No One"?
Yes.
You talking about that 2007 album? I can't remember the
Yes.
name either, but I know what you're talking about.
Yes. I would be
Okay.
that one. And I love Neil Lom's new album that came out and the new song that came out. So those three.
Yeah, got him like it's fire. Especially Golden
Absolutely.
Child's verse. I
Oh
love that
yeah.
verse.
That was beautiful.
Like he killed that. All right. If you could meet any scientist from the past, who would it be and why?
Oh man. It might be cliche, but I would actually be interested in reading Einstein because I really want to know, like, because as a scientist or as somebody with a brand new thought, you're usually cast out or just cast aside, and what
Mhm.
you discover isn't really appreciated until later in life. So I would love to meet him just to see how did he get through those obstacles of people calling him crazy or saying, "What is relativity? What are you talking about?" I would love to just meet him.
Got you. And that album that no one is on is the As I Am album, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
as I
there you go.
am.
All right, bet. All right. And it's interesting you said Einstein because usually we try to veer towards black scientists,
Hmm.
but you bringing up Einstein is a different take on, you know, your understanding personally of science and what you want to get from history
Yes,
in a
sir.
sense. So that was interesting. All right. If I wasn't Sister Maria Mahan, well, let me do this. Um, and yes, that As I Am album that came from my wife as well. So she knows her Alicia Keys, that's for
There we
sure.
go.
All right. Let me see. If you weren't a neuroscientist or a student studying neuroscience, what would you be, or what would you be doing?
I would be a tap dancer. Tap I would be a tap dancer. It's
Okay.
strange to see, but I would actually be a tap dancer. I was introduced to that when I was maybe 8 years old, and I couldn't stop. It was just I loved it.
Wow. I signed up for a tap dancing class in fourth grade. I never actually tapped. I just wanted to see them tap.
Mm.
I was like, I'm not gonna put the shoes on, but I want to see y'all do it.
It's something about
Okay.
making music with your feet. You don't even
Yeah.
need a beat with you. You can be the beat. I love that. So that's why I'd be a tap dancer.
That's bad. That's bad. Okay. All right. So my name is Sister Maria, and I am.
I'm grateful.
Praises to Allah. Yes, ma'am. We're grateful. Thank you so much, sis. We appreciate that. That's the end of the lightning round. We want to thank you, Jabril, and on behalf of myself and Jabril, we want to thank you for coming on the platform. This is your platform. This belongs to you. This is something that you can come to anytime you want. When you're finished with your PhD program, we want you back. When you discover something, we want you back.
Well, definitely, of course.
And anything that you do, anything that you do in neuroscience, we want to be a part of that. We want to be the first people you tell, outside, of course, your family, what have you. But we want to be the place where you can come and share your research. And we also, when you're done, so for those who are watching, a PhD student has to present their research in the form of a dissertation, and they have to present their work to their university to get their degree. That's just a simple way to put it. So we also want to be a platform where you come and present that same exact work that you're going to be presenting in your program. We want to host you on that too, so the whole world can see what you presented to university. Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, praise to Allah. Yes, we rarely get presentations on the show, and we definitely encourage scientists that they're working on research to come and present their findings on the STEM files. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, for those who are watching, you can definitely check out more of the STEM files on our social media pages at Tariq Cardiac and at Jabrian_engineer, at the STEM files on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and the STEM files on Facebook and YouTube. This has been another edition of the STEM files. Sister Maria, would you like to leave anything before you go? Leave the audience with anything before you go.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for listening to me, and I pray that whatever I was able to share has helped to enlighten anybody and maybe even inspire anybody to be a scientist, because believe it or not, we're already scientists.
Yes, so. Absolutely. By nature, that is exactly who we are. But family, thank you again for tuning in. This has been another edition of the STEM Files, where we host the best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and brown communities. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Until next time, family. Peace.
You believe in these false prophets, I say I bet he lying. No football, New York City Giants. Girl dad, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. When we teaching our babies, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teaching our women, we teach them heavy science. Heavy science. Heavy science. When we teach men, we teach them heavy